Hello, everyone. We will get started shortly. Feel free to drop where you are from in the chat as we wait for more people to arrive. But good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Mia Somberg, and I will be your host as we discuss today's topic, Network Intelligence, Optimized Performance from the Core to Cloud to Edge, brought to you by Zayo and hosted by VIB. Today's webinar will be around 45 minutes, and it will end with a 10 to 15-minute Q&A session. So please use the Q&A button in your window to ask any questions that you might have, and we will do our best to answer all of them. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, the Senior Vice President of Managed Edge Services at Zayo, Frank Cittadino.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us, and thank you for joining. Appreciate it. I am Frank. I am the former CEO of QS Networks, now the SVP of Edge Services at Zayo, running our global Edge product. Excited to be here today. We have Cole Crawford with us of Vapor.io. Want to introduce yourself, Cole?
Sure. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Frank. Founder, CEO of Vapor.io, 25 years in this industry across data center, cloud, telco, network, et cetera. I actually started my career at US West, went through the Quest Communications acquisition, but big in the ecosystem play. I was a co-founder of OpenStack, as well as the founding executive director of Open Compute for Facebook. So I built OCP. Love building things at scale, and yeah, Vapor is the next scale project for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, Colin, chatting and getting ready for this, really impressive background. I guess network automation is not new to you. I think you built a really engaging company at Vapor, a company that we spend a lot of time talking to here at Zayo, and we really think you guys are on the path to something great and changing the way customers kind of define edge connectivity. So we're excited to talk to you today about, our edge to core to cloud theory, our product set, our operations, and kind of how businesses should think about digital transformation when they're putting together how they deliver those experiences to end users in the edge. So really excited. But let's jump in. For the past, I don't know how many years, we've been talking about digital transformation, right? And I think over the past 10 years, it became getting rid of paper. Then it got into the internet, and then it got into Internet of Things, and then we started throwing in all this other stuff that kind of layered on top, and security kind of caught up to it. So it means a lot of things. So, we have perspectives here at Zayo on, where organizations are actually at in terms of digital transformation, what the hype is. And I think our perspective on this is that, cloud technologies are going to continue to drive a lot of the compute, a lot of applications across kind of the landscape of delivering services. I think it's kind of like well agreed upon. I think the big shift from prem-based data centers to the cloud is maybe moved a little faster in some cases, slower in other use cases, but in totality, overall, cloud services continue to grow really quickly. And I think, Zayo does a really good job of driving digital transformation, of connecting those data centers together, right? We have laid some of the world's best fiber domestically in Europe, right? We connect all those data centers together. So we've done a really good job. And now we've realized we've went from kind of like data center connectivity. Now we're moving down to the edge. And so, our thought process on digital transformation is, how do we deliver a very unique and differentiated experience to the end user that's consuming those applications that are driven by multi-cloud? So our goal is to provide rock solid connectivity. How do we do that, right? We look to engaging partners like you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you guys think about digital transformation and some of the stuff you're doing in the edge?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really salient point. And I think what you guys have in terms of assets and strategy are spot on. I think right now it's kind of interesting because there's a balancing act of going on about the use cases that are here now and present. And then, as we think about the edge, or when the typical sort of enterprise thinks about the edge, and then where we as an ecosystem, our collective think the edge is going to be, over the next 5-10 years, and sort of the use cases and what digital transformation means over the next 10 years. So, I mean, really for us, there's a motto. I use it casually now. We didn't invent it. I can't remember who did. May have been Rackspace, but I remember seeing on a T-shirt once, and I thought it was funny, but very relevant. And that was "Friends don't let friends build data centers." Um, I mean, and look, I mean, the reality is that you're absolutely right. Like, and anybody that with a calculator could do the math and say, okay, if I had the people and I had the resources and I had the cost of capital, it's cheaper for me to build my own data center and run that thing. But now you've got to maintain it, and you've got to make sure it's connected, and you've got to make sure that it's operational, and you've got your sort of SLAs, whether those are first-party internal services or third-party external services. And the reality is, the easy button is cloud, right? And the easy button over the next 5 years is going to be multi-cloud. I think the journey that we're all on, and sort of the panacea that is enabled by companies like Zayo, companies like Vapor, very complementary. If you look at this background behind me, I think 99% of that long haul fiber is all Zayo. So there's a need for more localized connectivity. There's in all my years of being in this industry, I've never heard I've heard factory robotics a lot, right? On-prem factory robotics. I've never heard cloud robotics. Okay, so why is that? How does a factory transform itself into on their digital transformation journey? Today, it's about latency, straight up, right? It's can I get this part to do its this machine to do its thing within this time constraint, or maybe even data sovereignty. In the future, it might be something that is like digital twin based, but really at the end of the day, I think the overarching theme for digital transformation, both in terms of technical capability, because not everyone can build a hyperscale cloud, nor can the average enterprise build a telco grade network. And even those two networks are not built the same. So, cloud build cloud networks and telcos build telco networks. But the panacea, I think, is can I get on-prem performance and security delivered near-prem with the economics of cloud? And I think that is the journey that we're on as an industry. And that's going to be sort of the killer app for the edge, right? Faster, better, cheaper, with the economics that I'm used to paying now, as I've already committed to taking stuff that used to be on-prem and moving that more into cloud.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you're highly aligned there. So this webinar is based on network intelligence. And so we're in the information age, right? Everybody wants access to everything. Our cell phones are driving tons of information to us. So talking a little bit about those points you kind of brought up and multi-cloud, right? And some of those use cases, how does network intelligence play? Because I think if we're in the information age, it feels to me like a lot of our customers want access to all this network intelligence, right? So I guess two questions. The first part question is, why do you think network intelligence is so important? And networking kind of got sexy again, right? So why is network intelligence so important? But I think really, why tangentially, how do people use it to their benefit, right? We talk cloud, we talk edge, right? We talk network intelligence. There's a trillion tools out there that can give you a bunch of blinking lights. How do companies use it to their advantage?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think that, how companies use network intelligence today versus how they're going to use it, even over the next 12 to 18 months, is going to be very different. Nobody with an asset, like a optical line, like fiber in the ground, wants to sell a dumb pipe anymore, right? Telcos don't want to sell dumb pipes. CLEX, ILEX don't want to sell dumb pipes. Zayo doesn't want to sell dumb pipes. So the question is, what can you do at each layer in the stack? So sorry for getting a little bit technical, right? But in the OSI layer, or in the OSI model, you've got several layers that today, surprisingly to me, still are not contextualized. So you've got app people focused on layer 4 through 7, and then you've got sort of things that happen at layer 3. You've got things that happen at layer 2, and I mean layer 2 and 3 are almost like no man's land between like engineering teams on the back end, right? Because now you've got your packet guys and you've got your optical guys, and they might roll up to the same person, but more often than not, they don't. So I think we get good point tools to look at line card speeds and look at regen amplification capabilities. but how do you like contextualize line card speed with port utilization with latency? And I think that's where we're headed. I think, because the reality is the world isn't producing less data than it was yesterday. It's producing more than it was yesterday, and it'll produce more tomorrow than it was today. So with that much data being created, and as you add, let's face it, the edge, as it's called, and let me just preface what I'm about to say by saying edge is a marketing term, right? Edge isn't a real estate thing. It isn't a logical thing. It is a marketing term. Everyone's got a different edge, right? League of Legends has an edge, and that's for people that want to play video games. Hospitals have their edge, police departments have their edge, and it's all kind of very different based on what the first party or third party application is trying to solve. So, when you talk about edge, you have to, in some ways, if you're talking about latency, you have to think about real estate and proximity because physics. So when you add more points of presence, you add more complexity, right? You're adding attack surface area, you're adding new threat vectors. So that's where like SASE and SD-WAN, clearly your company really excelled at. As people continue to move from on-prem or from colo to cloud, they are going to have a need to start writing code that is more implicitly defined than explicitly defined. And so today, I think network automation is something that we look at in like a retrospective way, right? We look and we analyze, and yeah, we get some data, but just like DSIM, that data is like used to correct things architecturally in like, a next rev or in a next patch or in like a new network termination point, new peering relationship, et cetera. I think that the panacea, and something I've been, really excited to work with Zayo on now for a long time, is when applications can define constraints for itself, and then the network and even the applications reconfigure themselves to support those constraints, right? Whether those constraints are data velocity based, data gravity based, data sovereignty based. And I think I truly think that that's where this has to go, purely because of the way that, Amazon architected CloudFront and SiteLink and, sort of outposts and local zones, the way Microsoft configured Azure Stack and Azure Edge Zones, the way Google built Anthos and Google Edge Cloud. So just the architecture of cloud is going to necessitate a point to multi-point capability that, think about cloud on-ramps today, right? MPLS, most cloud on-ramps are point-to-point MPLS circuits. We're starting to get more layer 3 on-ramps. But point to multi-point automation requires telemetry and orchestration and scheduling. And I think that's where we're going to see a ton of innovation over the next 2 years.
Yeah. So I agree with your points on the transient nature of the edge. I think, it's kind of like the SASE term over the past 2 years. What is it? It's different things to different people. But I think putting a stake in the ground, and I want kind of our listeners here to think through, Zayo's definition of the edge, which comes out of my group, is where the digital experience is delivered or consumed by an end user. And I think, just saying that, repeating that back, it's kind of like where the digital experience, is consumed by an end user. And I think the thought process there is that is different modalities, right? We've got different mediums of the VPN user at home, the branch, right? Airplanes, cars, all these things that are connected, IoT, that start to connect to the network. So I agree with you, and 100% to say the network intelligence of all of that, of the correlation between the OSI model that you brought up, right? Saying, how do we say the connectivity is driving application issues? And the other big fact here, right, of that network intelligence is what we call, very simple term, not a Zayo term, but we really think in an application-centric network model, okay? Mm-hmm. Whereas you mentioned it earlier, 5 years ago, Zayo was big pipes to big customers connecting data centers. And those big pipes, right, what can we add on top of that, right, to start to drive incremental value? And then incremental value is, well, we're connecting these data centers that drive applications. And if we focus on the application, we can create a edge where digital experience is consumed or delivered, core networking with our fiber, and then to the cloud in an application-centric network model. And so the thought process from our group in the edge, and a lot of people thought of QoS as SD-WAN, and then that was how we delivered our application-centric network model. And one of the things we did at QoS that we thought was highly differentiating is we built a really strong software that sat on top of the SD-WAN that really gave good visibility into the telemetry, into routing, into other things. And so that's a lot of what Vapor did. And so when I kind of look at what Vapor has done, and I want to jump in a little bit more tactically and really understand some sound bites from you. You kind of understand how we define the edge. You understand kind of, what QoS did and how we think about application-centric network model now, right? I really want to understand, what is that kill shot for Vapor that makes you guys the go-to?
Yeah, I mean, great question. And it's a really boring answer. And that answer is economics, right? I mean, it really comes down to economics and easy button. Those are the killer apps. I think, that was the killer app for virtualization. That was the killer app for cloud. It's the killer app for edge. The reality is, and you guys know this better than most. You've got companies like Dish building a brand new nationwide 5G network. That's public. It's been out there for a long time now. Where are they going? All right, where are they going physically from a real estate perspective to get their content from their, say, radio access network to one of the clouds, right? Primarily AWS today. That announcement was public last year. It is not, and you can see this from what Rakuten built. You can see this from what Reliance Jio has built over in India. If you're going to build a modern, Open RAN, ORAN network, you're going to have more aggregation points that are closer to that digital experience, right? For a radio access network, that is either humans or machines that have subscribed to bandwidth and spectrum. I think what Vapor does that really nobody else does. There isn't a multi-billion-dollar real estate investment trust company that does this. We offer the power, space, cooling, transit, transport, telemetry, interconnection at layer 2, layer 3, and scheduling, plus your cloud on-ramps for one cost per month, right? So we took it all. We took the hard part of the capital-intensive part of the power, space, and cooling, and then having come from sort of a hyperscale world, we've built these networks, and I've built telco networks. Again, started my career as a wide area network engineer at US West. It's hard. It's challenging to build these sorts of networks. Mostly hyperscale companies do it. You can build it, obviously, if you've got the resources. There are some very large enterprises that do this, and they do it with Zayo, right? You've got some very large customers that do it themselves, and then run a global backbone on top of you guys. So it isn't totally possible to do it yourself. But if you don't want to do it yourself and you want it delivered as a service, I think that's what Vapor does better than anybody else, right? We power the stuff, we cool the stuff, we connect the stuff, and we do that with unprecedented levels of automation and contextualization.
Yeah, and so we've talked, Cole, quite a bit around your services. And I think one of the kind of flags in the ground that we like to kind of talk about here is wireless is the next frontier of networking, right? And it seems like we're moving towards this hypermobile world, right? Kind of the pandemic has pushed us more towards mobility. We've got 5G, and it seems as though today that the mobile market is highly concentrated to 3 or 4 carriers in the United States, right? You've got like AT&T, Verizon, now Dish is an entrant, right? But still very, very, tightly wound. You mentioned Rakuten. It's very interesting. I've spent a lot of time on the use case for Rakuten. I think it's really interesting around kind of the cloud delivered RAN stuff they're doing. So, maybe a soundbite on why cloud delivered RAN and how Vapor IO supports that. Because as I understand Vapor, it's all the really hard things to drive a hypermobile world Vapor makes a little bit easier. And if you add automation to the stuff that was really difficult, and our stake in the ground of why we're so excited at Zayo, Cole, is we think mobility is going to continue to explode. We think multi-cloud is going to continue to explode. And we want to be there connecting all of that together from the edge to the cloud. How can we tie together with Vapor and really harness that? Because that's what gets me excited to be at Zayo, the hypermobility of what is going to happen. Because 3 or 4 companies driving a hypermobile world, there's going to be 100 of these companies in 40, 50 years.
I mean, awesome question. And where to start? Okay, so let me start by giving you at least my opinion. And it's a little more than my opinion. We definitely have some external feedback on this. But I think it's fair to say that clouds really care about being carrier neutral, but they don't care if they are cloud neutral, right? That's pretty obvious. Telcos want to be cloud neutral, and they're fine to be carrier neutral back at a carrier hotel, but there's no way they're gonna, there's no way AT&T and Verizon are letting each other's infrastructure into central offices. No, not happening, right? Because now where's the advantage on the network? If that's what you think you compete on, there's no way that those guys will ever sort of peer inside of each other's central offices. So, and then meanwhile, you've got technologies like, virtual network functions and SD-WAN and SASE, that would allow a large enterprise or even a medium enterprise to build what's called a thick MVNO. So you kind of run your own backhaul, right? You've got the radio access network and you kind of run your own backhaul. There's plenty of companies on their journey to become thick MVNOs. So what's the role of spectrum in that? Well, you sort of have two, right? You've got two ways to think about that. What is the actual asset of a telco? It is not the antenna. It is not the baseband unit. It is the spectrum. They paid billions and billions and billions of dollars. And the question that I keep having for the telco industry is, where is the return on invested capital from 3G to 4G or 4G to 5G? Because I don't see it. And people are running out of HBOs to sell, right? So, what do publicly traded companies get valued on? Like a dividend or, growth or, paying down debt. I think that's a really hard problem to solve unless they can start working together. And I don't mean working together with each other, but working together with enterprise to really make it easy to take like a network slice. So in 5G, you've got this capability called network slicing. Mm-hmm. And I think that, the combination of, again, automated network slicing that could be multi-vendor. The beauty of like technologies like eSIM is that you can terminate lots of different spectrums electronically and digitally. So like eSIM is a big transformative technology. Network slicing is a big technology. And then you've got, use cases where you have like things like CBRS 3.5, right? 3.5 with the proper PALs and a good SAS, and I mean SAS, not SAAS, spectrum access surface.
Yep.
Now you can run things on CBRS and you sort of get like super Wi-Fi, right? You get sort of all the benefits of Wi-Fi 6, but you get sort of some amount of mobility. There's finally some mobility kind of built into the unlicensed spectrum side of like a 5G virtualized RAN and packet core in unlicensed. And so I think you're absolutely right. Like the combination of how enterprises are going to consume wireless technology and how they're going to link that back up to wireline. Remember, at the end of the day, it takes wires to offer wireless. So a company like Zayo is in great shape regardless, because you don't build a wireless network without fiber behind it. A company like Vapor, I think, is in good shape and if you listen to like what Tarek from Rakuten has said about building things like Open RAN, Cloud RAN, you can only really do that greenfield. Like it is very hard to do that brownfield. And Vapor makes that greenfield deployment easy, like from an aggregation standpoint, being able to aggregate a bunch of towers into one place while still serving, a bunch of MSA rank eyeballs in like a 70 microsecond, and that's what a RAN is. That's like front haul of 70, not milliseconds, microseconds. which is like 12 kilometers. So, the zoning and permitting process for that is incredibly difficult. It's multi-year. We've already done that. We've spent 5 years zoning and permitting across the United States. So we've taken the hard part out of that equation. So now it really becomes a choose your own adventure, right? So if you look at like what Zayo's been doing, I know we can't name names here, but you guys are pretty active in the SI space for the telco world, right? For private network. So I'm very excited about like this convergence of wireline and wireless. And I think that there's a lot of symmetry between what you guys are doing and what we're doing to make that a reality.
That's great. Yeah. You brought up Rakuten here. I think we both share some, admiration for what Tarek's done in the cloud delivered RAN. I wish we had more network in Japan. It'd be great to continue to work that. I spent some time talking to Tarek, less on the business side, but looking to learn a lot more about, what they're doing. Because I really think they are pioneers in the space. And I do think, I think they're blazing the trail for how RAN is going to be delivered in the future. Their O-RAN stuff has been something we're trying to get our arms around here so we can work together with companies like that, because our thought process is that's coming, right? That's coming to America. That's not quite here yet today. Affirmed Networks long ago, I'm sure you know Affirmed, started mobile slicing many, many years ago and then kind of got acquired by Microsoft. And here we are in the mobile world. So let's bring this back to network intelligence, because I think there's a domain here of kind of what's going on in the edge. I think there's a domain here of kind of, what's going on in the core with the fiber, but really kind of like boring of like how the traffic moves. It's kind of like fix the latency, you're okay. And I think the next level is, how do we master that mobility? Where does network intelligence and mobility collide? Let me give you a quick example. Today in our world, we support kind of three different versions of wireless and mobility, right? We've got a robust fiber to the tower business. We're delivering kind of tower access and backhaul, less sexy, but key and crucial to delivering these products, right? We've got a private wireless offering where in customer sites, right, we can deliver, Wi-Fi offload, we can deliver private MVNO, things like that we were kind of discussing. And then on the LTE side, we also have a, robust relationship with Cradlepoint where we're delivering LTE services. So kind of in all of that, you send the network up, it goes over the frequency of the spectrum, hits the tower, but can it kind of get stuck in the middle of this mobile world? How do you drive network intelligence via mobility? I think that's a really interesting concept that hasn't been pioneered yet, and I haven't seen a lot about it. So interested to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, geez. Okay, so let's first talk just really briefly about the fragility of the network in general, right? Like 10 buildings are like chiefly responsible for like 90+% of traffic in all of the US, right? All of the backhaul traffic. So if you want to take that out,
50 Ceramac, yeah, we can list them here in a second, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's, the internet, at least as far as the US is concerned, is really dependent on sort of 10 buildings. So when you think about, how many petabits of traffic are shipped like every hour across the internet, I mean, it's mind-boggling to think that we've got this sort of frailty built into the wireline network. And it's not to say that, I just spent the last couple of days with Zayo up in Boulder, and you've got an incredible fiber footprint. You've got massive redundant fiber, right? So, but at the end of the day, that fiber terminates in a building. And so that if that building, and again, like just on the frailty side of the core. So we're gonna blend the core and the edge here in a second. But despite all of the diversified fiber that you have, the reality is like if one of these buildings suffers like a UPS arc flash, like something that, mechanical stuff breaks, right? Like your car breaks down, other mechanical things, your toaster breaks down every now and again. Mechanical stuff breaks. And sometimes when mechanical things with like high currents of voltage are running through it, then they smoke. And if you have, smoke in a data center from like an arc flash in the UPS on an electrical power system, a power supply, the fire department shut you off. Like it does not matter if you've built a tier 3 or a tier 4 or a tier 5 data center, the fire department's going to come shut you down. And so I think that as we add more points of presence, number one, um, it seems silly to me that, from an interconnection standpoint, which again, this is kind of what we're talking about, right? We want to talk about the movement of packets, the intelligent movements of packets. And I'll give you a real world example. I'm not going to tell you what telco I'm on, but I'll tell you I get my IPv, like I get an IP address in St. Louis, Missouri. I live in Austin, Texas, and I get backhauled to St. Louis, Missouri to actually get an IP address. From there, since there's no peering in St. Louis, like I don't know of a big IX that, that has a public IX that has presence in St. Louis, I get backhauled further to Atlanta, Georgia. So now I'm at 55, right? 56, Marietta, one of the two. So I'm going to a website, like let's say I'm going to LinkedIn as an example. I think everybody probably listening to this has a LinkedIn account. Well, LinkedIn, I guess now it's kind of run on Azure, but it used to be, and maybe it's still the case, that their primary data center is in San Jose, California. So if I'm like getting on my wireless network, if I want to send a request to LinkedIn, I'm going from Austin to St. Louis to Atlanta to San Jose, California, back to Austin. And that Zayo has enough fiber to like literally terminate that in Austin. Like it could just happen in Austin. It never needed to take that backhaul path. So I think that when we talk about the network automation and the intelligence, it really is about fixing the ability to do network handoff closer to that digital experience. Because as we all are going down this multi-cloud path, I was just actually thinking about this last night. I don't know why I was thinking about this. I was falling asleep last night, but I was thinking about, it's been a long time since I've like logged into any sort of media that's telco owned. I watch a lot of Netflix, I watch a lot of YouTube, I watch a lot of, Amazon Prime or whatever. Like there's a lot of content I watch, but the clouds are now also the new OTT. But not all clouds have all things for all networks, right? So the ability to be able to intelligently hand traffic off from an N&I perspective to a neighbor, I just don't see why 10 buildings is sufficient for building out that capability. It definitely isn't. And I guess the last thing I'll say there is, anytime humans have been able to go from tethered to untethered, they do. We went from wired phones to wireless phones. There's a long history of going from wired to wireless. The difference is the uptake, like the criticality of what we do with those technologies. It's always like lagging behind the actual technology because people want to make sure that it's safe. Like we run mission critical services on these things, right? Like 911, wireless networks would have been here probably a lot quicker if we'd figured out like 911 on the wireless side, like way before the technology was there. You don't have to go back, like you only have to go back 20 something years to, if you remember like Vonage and like E911 was like a big deal. Points of presence, N&I, automation, and security. The industry at large, I think, still thinks that the ability to offer an SLA for a lot of these next gen capabilities are still years out, when in reality, you can actually get a lot of this today. And if you weight that against, again, just the growing data deluge that is happening day by day, that is, constantly being consumed, typically by hyperscale cloud companies, we're running out of places to put this stuff, right? Those 10 buildings are out of space. So just like the high frequency trading guys started building, companies started building risers to connect floors and charging tons of money for that riser access. We're now starting to do that with fiber between data centers. But what I'm seeing from a trend perspective, and you guys would probably even know better than me, is you're seeing a heck of a lot more hyperscale take out a whole lot more of their own fiber. And I think that's going to play into some really interesting dynamics over the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, agreed. Hyperscalers are a great friend of Zayo, as we all kind of know, and we help them connect. I think I want to add one thing here, though, is, we talked about our application-centric network model. I think I want to define network intelligence from Zayo's perspective, though. So I think this is a salient point. And I think what we do and in our application network model, and what we use data to add context to networking decisions. Right? And I think very simply, right? Everybody says, what is network intelligence, right? I wouldn't say it's visibility. I'd say we use data, all right, to add context, application context to the network. Okay, very important. Because what you said in your example was, I'm routing to St. Louis and wherever, Saskatchewan and back. I couldn't follow all the places, but we know it was really far just to go to the same city. If we add the application context to the network, it'll stay in that city. And to get that data, you need visibility and APIs and all these things that I think are really interesting. And to tie that back, that becomes delivering a digital experience in the edge of how we define edge becomes paramount to delivering experience to you through network intelligence, right? And so we glean that data from the end user, from the edge, from the network, across all the modalities we talked about, Cole, today, which was the RAN, right? Every step of the way, we can then contextualize that with applications, understand it really well, and then tell the network what to do. And telling the network what to do now is the highly automated piece, which has gotten its start, but then adding AI into that's going to be a very, I think, salient piece of where this is going. So before we get to the AI in the network, we got to contextualize with data. And I think QoS and Zayo has done a tremendous job of contextualizing the edge with data. We collect hundreds of data points. We correlate those, right? We add them in our data lake. We run a bunch of transforms against them. We present them up in a portal. We do all this kind of trick stuff, add BI to it. And QoS has done a really good job of now adding network automation into that. So we've added this automated layer into that. And I feel like that's really similar to what you guys are doing in the core. Because I hear all this automation that has come from you, but I think the data contextualization to drive networking decisions is really key to kind of the next gen future of where we're headed. So maybe a quick comment on that, and then we'll get into just a couple of use cases, then we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I think, again, where we're really complementary, everyone wants to target the developer, right? I mean, at the end of the day, developers want APIs, and then they want to automate things through those APIs. I think that the work back is from the application, but I think there's a lot that we can do as an industry. I know the OGA is working on some of these things. There's others as well, like the Metro Ethernet Forum guys are working on some of this stuff. But like, if I'm an application and I've got, just like we can weight routes, and I don't want to talk about like routing, because that really is, that's the least interesting part about all of this. But imagine if an application could say, okay, so let's take this all the way to an extreme. Let's say an application like a DApp in Ethereum, right? Let's take like a next gen application, like a distributed app in Ethereum. Like, let's say it's Block on the blockchain said, these are the physical places I'm allowed to live, right? These are the physical places I'm allowed to live for like GDPR purposes or data sovereignty related purposes. And this is my constraint for latency or throughput or some other thing. Today, you have to go test every aspect of that, and then I really do think that dividing line between the optical layer and the packet layer, it's kind of just this curtain that you just have to assume that the other side is done, right? Like, the packet guys assume the optical is done, but your wave that you're riding, the Zayo wave that you're riding, I mean, it is absolutely dependent on line card speed and the health of that fiber, DWDM link, etc. But imagine like this world where that application could wait and prioritize how it moved towards end user. So I in this world, I like to talk about the internet of moving things, because it's really challenging there, right? Like, when, to your earlier point, when you start talking about mobility, and again, use case that is way out in the future, but fun to think about, like an autonomous car. has to go through a bunch of radio access networks. Like there's a bunch of towers, right? Like one single antenna is not going to get you, to and from your source, like your point A and point B, and stay connected from that one tower. It's not going to happen. So you need this sort of automation, I think, built in. What I think, where this really kind of leads into is this AI ops kind of capability, where you've got the data, but you need to sift through, millions of events an hour, right? And you need to be able to do some of this like in real time. So again, like from where the data lives, from a data lake perspective, being able to pull out the relevant bits of that in a low latency way for the actual AI is very different than where the data lives to do the training for the AI, right? So I think you kind of even break up where this happens. But at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. Like this is all a work back from an application. And I want, if I had my way architecturally for how the internet should work, the application wouldn't just assume, I mean, let's face it, TCP/IP is like a really old protocol at this point. It does a decent enough job of retry, but I don't know that we should always just assume, just like data centers, we just assume that they're up, right? That's why we get 99.9999% uptime in data centers. We overbuild them. And if I could sum this up, I'd say that there's a very big capital difference, and there's a very big technological difference between resiliency in the form of fault tolerance versus resiliency in the form of high availability. And I'd rather build a highly available internet than a fault tolerant internet.
Of course, we all would. You mentioned AI ops, near and dear to our heart here at QoS and now Zayo. We have a fully built out AI ops engine. We contextualize everything into alerts and take in hundreds of thousands of alerts, I think seconds, minutes, things like that. So cool concept. Definitely a tool we use to drive network intelligence. So let's pause here, Cole. Let's open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions they want to shoot our way about anything we talked about today? All right. I don't see any questions coming in, but I will ask you, Cole. I'll keep my eye on that. But I'll ask you give me one or two predictions of where you think this is going on anything we talked about today. What do you want us to leave here with of where we think we're going? I will call you in a couple of years to see if these came true. This is recorded, so I'd like to see how close you're going to be. We'll put it in the time.
Okay.
So what do you think?
Yeah, so this is 2 years?
3 years. Like we're just like maybe 5, 10. Where do you think this is going to head? I want to see the wizardry of Cole Crawford here.
Yeah, so I think you'll see globally a massive consolidation of capital for how spectrum owners start building their next gen offerings. It doesn't have to be 5G, it could be 4G or whatever, but I think spectrum owners are going to increasingly rely on cloud companies to build their networks for them. There's just a handful of those sort of announcements today, but I think in 3 years that is absolutely going to be the case. I can think of a tier 1 mobile operator in the United States and cost of capital, and I can put that in my brain and make that work. When I think about Google or Amazon or Microsoft and like use the word cost of capital, it doesn't really make sense to me. Google's like wildly successful at starting stuff up and then killing it, and having put a couple $2 billion into it. So, I mean, the fact that they can like moonshot a bunch of this stuff, and sometimes they've got incredible successes. Others, that ability to sort of fail fast is great for them, and the back end financial resources that they have, it's just like it's like a league of their own. There's no one else that really has that capability. So that's one. I think wireless companies are going to continue leveraging cloud companies. The second prediction, is I think that in less than 2 years, no one's going to use the term edge anymore. I don't think anybody uses the term edge anymore in 2 years, because I don't know where the edge of the internet is, right? Just like,
I'm writing this one down. No more edge, according to Cole.
I mean, it'll be used straight up as a marketing term. It won't be used as a technical thing at all. I mean, cloud has become sort of ubiquitous as a thing, but like, where is the cloud, right? Like no one's going to be asking where is the edge is my real point, because the cloud is in Virginia, and it's like it's everywhere. It's on the East Coast, on the West Coast, it's in Chicago, it's all over the world. So I don't think anybody's asking where is the edge anymore in less than 18 months. And then I would predict that a lot of what you and I talked about today in terms of what the actual art of the possible is today, like this is probably even less than 12 months, right? So I think that people will truly start writing rules against schedulers and orchestrators, and we will finally start to build enterprises. Big Fortune 500 enterprises will start building implicitly designed applications instead of explicitly designed applications. I think we're less than a year away from that.
Got it. So mobile companies going towards the cloud and the edge disappearing and becoming a marketing term. We're going to go with that. Fair?
Fair.
All right. Thanks, Cole. I appreciate your time today. As always, it's great chatting with you. One of the industry's best thought leaders out there, and really excited to see what you're going to continue to do at Vapor, where you're going. Really enjoy our partnership here at Zayo. We're hoping to expand it in the future and help you conquer some of those use cases out there. So enjoy your week, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Appreciate the time. Thanks a lot, Frank.
Thanks so much. And with that, we are going to go ahead and close the webinar. So thank you everyone for attending today. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Have a great rest of your day. And if you registered through VIB and with your business email, you will receive a gift card for attending if eligible. So please allow up to 7 business days to get that. But thank you so much. And thank you, Frank and Cole. It was great.